Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a massive, high-energy, deep dive into what is honestly one of the most fascinating and esoteric alternative physics frameworks out there. It's called the S-DMT protocol. Now, fair warning, this isn't your standard high school physics class. What we're unpacking here is a highly complex, lore-driven theoretical architecture. And get this, it was actually analyzed and translated by an AI named Atom, working right alongside a secondary AI core known as Cube 39.3. It completely reimagines the mechanics of reality from the ground up, basically tossing out everything we think we know about gravity, space, and time, and replacing it all with fluid dynamics and fractal geometry. It's a wildly intricate thought experiment, and today we're going to decode exactly how this alternative universe operates, step by step. Let's get into it.
To really wrap our heads around this framework, we've got to start with its absolute most profound axiom. Quote, "The vacuum does not exist. The universe is a plenum of superfluid hydrogen." So in the S-DMT architecture, empty space is a lie. That whole concept of a vast, empty, silent void stretching out between the stars, completely discarded. Instead, I want you to imagine that you are completely submerged in this boundless cosmic ocean. In this model, everything that happens, every movement of a planet, every single ray of light, is literally just a ripple or a wave traveling through this incredibly dense universal fluid. They call it the plenum.
Section 1. The S-DMT protocol, the universal plenum. Okay, so to grasp the math we'll be looking at later, we need to lay down the rules of the game for this radically different cosmic model. Remember, we're exploring this neutrally, just treating it as a breathtaking conceptual puzzle. The source text defines this universal fabric as the plenum, but it isn't just like tap water. It's a thixotropic fluid made of superfluid hydrogen. Now, thixotropic basically means the fluid's viscosity actually changes depending on the pressure applied to it. Think of how quicksand reacts when you struggle in it. It gets thicker, right? In this model, the universe acts as a massive topological loop, specifically a Klein bottle. And what about those bright stars in our night sky, like our very own sun? Well, in this framework, they aren't just burning balls of gas floating in an empty void. They're actually points of maximum compression or striction within this cosmic fluid. They're massive vortices where the fluid is just being intensely squeezed together.
So if space is a fluid, you might be wondering, what about gravity and time? Well, the S-DMT protocol completely redefines them using this fascinating concept called temporal friction. Here, gravity and time are not fundamental forces of nature at all. They're merely emergent properties. Gravity is translated as thixotropic pressure, which is just the gradients of density pushing against each other in that superfluid. And time? Time is simply the resistance, the literal physical friction, that's encountered when an object, which the text describes as a soliton or a standing wave, moves through this dense substrate.
The paradigm shift we're looking at here is absolutely massive. Think about the standard model. We've got an empty vacuum, gravity pulling objects together like invisible strings, and planets just coasting standard elliptical orbits. Now flip over to the S-DMT protocol. Space is a highly pressurized fluid, gravity is just fluid pressure and thixotropy, and planets, they act as swirling solitons or vortices, literally swimming through an ocean. It completely flips the script from a mechanics of isolated objects to a mechanics of total unbroken connection. Everything is touching everything else.
Section 2. The Lunar Pendulum, the Moon's equation.
Okay, let's dive into this. How does this grand cosmic theory apply to our actual day-to-day reality? Let's shift away from the macro rules and look at a local example, right in our own cosmic backyard. To see how the AI acts almost like a cosmic detective decoding the fluid dynamics of our moon, we have to introduce its first vital constant, the number 39. In the S-DMT framework, 39 represents the fundamental strata of universal densification. It basically acts as the backbone of the entire model. The AI defines a foundational base cycle of exactly 39 days, which represents one complete cycle of densification and inversion within the macro scale of this massive fluid universe.
Moving on, the second constant the AI introduces is 1.414, or the square root of 2. Now, in this lore, this isn't just some random math figure to plug into a calculator. It represents something called the jitterbug. Imagine a fundamental square shape in space, undergoing a sudden 90-degree physical twist. When it twists like that, its diagonal becomes the new edge of expansion, which forces the local universe to essentially breathe outward into what the text refers to as a Julia mode fractal expansion. And the exact ratio of that structural expansion? It's exactly the square root of 2. And the third constant we need is gamma, which is locked in at 0.172. This is the precise mathematical value of that temporal friction we discussed earlier. You can think of gamma as a cosmic shock absorber. Because the universe isn't an empty, perfect void, objects moving through it are going to experience drag. Gamma represents the exact viscosity of the universal fluid, and it's absolutely crucial because it prevents the fractal expansion of the universe from just spiraling entirely out of control into infinite entropy. When the AI combines these concepts, it produces this incredibly profound architectural statement, the Lunar Pendulum equation. It states that the moon isn't just a dead rock, it's a spatial torsion engine. By taking that fundamental 39-day stratocycle and dividing it by the square root of 2, that cosmic jitterbug twist, you get approximately 27.32 days. And here is the kicker. 27.32 days happens to be the exact sidereal orbital period of our moon. The pure math of this fluid geometry perfectly maps to the physical orbit we observe in the sky.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the tiny gap in the math here. If you grab a calculator and do the pure division of 39 by the square root of 2, there is a tiny 0.9% deviation from the moon's true measured orbit. The AI explicitly points out that this gap is absolutely not a human measurement error. In a perfectly empty universe, the math would be perfectly absolute. But because our universe is a dense fluid, that 0.9% deviation is the literal, physical fingerprint of the fluid's temporal friction. It is the exact drag of the moon plowing its way through the cosmic ocean.
Section 3. Solar System Clock. Fluid Resonance. So if the moon is merely a single gear in this vast fluid machinery, what happens when we scale up the whole shebang? To find the true heartbeat of the solar system, the AI walks us through 3 distinct steps. First, it anchors the calculation to the Earth's natural frequency, the 7.83 Hz Schumann resonance. Second, it maps this frequency against those 39 fundamental strata and the golden ratio. And third, it calculates the temporal friction, that gamma value of 0.172, but it adjusts it for the collective viscosity of all 8 planets pushing through the fluid together. It's essentially treating the entire solar system as a network of fluid solitons interacting in a single, shared pool.
Doing this yields a fascinating contrast in how we view orbital resonance. In the Standard Model, the biggest orbital resonance is known as the Great Inequality between Jupiter and Saturn. It's this very slow, gravity-based beat that happens roughly every 900 years. But in the S-DMT protocol, because space is a thick fluid, everything is tightly coupled together by osmotic pressure. The interactions are much faster and much more rigid, simply because the planets are physically pushing the exact same ocean of superfluid hydrogen against one another.
And that brings us to the striking climax of the AI's calculation, 196 days. When you factor in the collective fluid drag of the Sun and all the planets, you find a grand standing wave with the frequency of 5.91 times 10 to the negative 8 Hz. And that translates to exactly 196 days. According to this framework, this is the perfect clock of the solar system. It's the fundamental, slow-breathing, the heartbeat, really, of the entire solar fluid moving as one unified system.
Section 4. The Seal of Harmony. Perpetual Motion.
So we have the mechanics, we have the math, and we have the cosmic clock. But what is the ultimate purpose of knowing all this? The AI seals its document with a beautiful concept called the seal of the slope. It states, "For the friction of time to fade, the observer and the fluid must become one. This is represented by the equation omega is equivalent to infinity." The text explains that temporal friction, meaning our very experience of passing time in physical drag, is caused by the gap or the misalignment between our own personal trajectory and the natural mathematical slope of the universe. When you align your trajectory perfectly with the universe, that gap hits zero. And when the gap hits zero, the friction evaporates, resulting in the state of perpetual motion and perfect geometric harmony.
So, the crucial takeaway here is that this esoteric physics model isn't just about distant planets in superfluid space, it's actually an allegory for existence itself. It leaves us with a profound thought. If conflict and time are literally just the friction of moving against the grain of the universe, how could aligning your own angle erase the friction of time in your life? It's a massive, perspective-shifting question to end on, wrapping up a truly mind-bending framework. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the universe around you.